Welcome to Villain Garage, and I think on this episode we're going to talk about 10 tips on things you need to consider in getting into and buying a project car. Now the last tip at the very end of the video is going to cover some very beginner tips, stuff that I think there's some guidelines you need to stick to if this is going to be your first project car. It's quite simple. Do you even have the space to do it? Now, there are ways around it. If you only have your driveway and you got a lengthy enough driveway or a wide enough driveway, or a part in your yard even that you can put up one of those pop-up metal carports, that would even work. The idea is you don't want to be limited to the elements. It's nice to even have a single bay garage. That's plenty of space. You know, on nice days you can push the car out, do some fab work, whatever. On cold days or too hot days where you need air conditioner or heater, you can push the car in and just kind of, shimmy around the car. It might be a little tight, but at least you have the available space if you need it. Second part's quite simple, but it can be time consuming. You want to really take your time, figure out the terminology, what they call the vehicles, chassis codes, stuff like that. You also need to figure out makes, models, like the make is obviously going to be the same, but the model year. You want to make sure that you're branching out as far as you possibly can and getting everything you possibly want. For example, these are like 89 to 93, but to get the dual overhead cam motor, you need the 91 to 93. Got to know that. You also want to make sure that they excite you, that the term of the project, say a year or two, that the car excites you enough to keep doing it. This was a failed project from multiple owners who got into it, got in over their head, weren't excited enough, and sold the project because their excitement, their drive to finish the car didn't exceed the amount of work that had to be done. First step into actually getting one is you got to come up with a budget. The further you're going to take your project, the more work you're willing to do, the cheaper you can get. Now I know on these chassis it's hard to find a really good one, and I didn't want to take a good one and chop it up. I don't know, it's kind of sacrilegious to me. So I knew that from the front to the back of it was going to be touched. So I could get one that was pretty decently bad. I just didn't want a body too far gone. And doing the research and common problems and stuff like that I was talking about in the last one, I knew where all the common rust spots were, the bad ones, the ones I didn't want to fix. I'm not worried about rust here, rust there, any of those little bitty things. I'm worried about the frame rails. Those were the big things. This car has no frame rail rust, it was good to go. It was within budget, everything else. Now you could take that budget a little bit higher, but that applies to a tip later on, and I'll discuss it then. But when you're initially buying the car or looking, don't be afraid to spend $100, $200 more on a really good gem. If I found this car and it was in pristine condition, like the body was, I knew the interior and all that stuff was crap. The back glass had problems. The front glass was cracked. You know, it's one of those, I probably would have spent a little bit more money to not have to deal with all these little problems that I'm going to be dealing with. But in my case, it really doesn't matter. I would have stripped all the paint off. I would have been doing all that. So you got to know where you're going to touch, what you're not going to touch. For example, if you're not going to do any interior work and you don't really want to mess with the interior minus the little customizations, spend the extra money, find a car with good interior. It's just simple. The further you're going to go with the project, the more you're going to do, the cheaper you're able to get, because you can get a car that's further gone. So now you have your budget and you know what kind of vehicle you want to buy. Now you got to find one. And it's quite simple. I suggest starting out by joining the community to which the vehicle belongs. We went to the community and kind of put out feelers. Got to know the people that had, the plethora of parts because you never know when they're going to come across somebody that has a car. And they can snatch it up, or they might have one themselves. One of their buddies might have one. You don't know. It's a good source, and inside that community you can get some really good deals. Move out onto Craigslist. Know your area though with Craigslist, because you go south of me, you get into the northwest Arkansas area, and you get the Walmart money, and a lot of the old project owners think their projects or their cars are gold plated, and they want almost twice as much for a vehicle as if I went to Springfield, Kansas City, Tulsa, or even way out to even St. Louis. You also could check out Facebook. Facebook Marketplace is actually pretty good. It's starting to pick up. I know in bigger cities it's starting to pick up really well. Even in our little area, I'm finding 240 parts that I need for this car even being posted on there. So it's actually something you set a reminder, like mine, 240SX, my house, 100 miles around it. And I get a Facebook notification every single time somebody posts something that meets that criteria. It's really good with it. There are the car auctions. You can get a broker that will then bid on the car for you. Usually it costs you about $100, $150 more in the long run. But the point is usually at those local auctions, or even the ones like, say, Copart, stuff like that, you can get a car that you're getting such a good deal. If something else is wrong with it, it usually doesn't matter, because you got such a good deal on the car that it's still a good deal even if that problem wasn't there. I'm not a big fan of this one because I don't think you have a limit. I think you can learn and do whatever you want to do. I started out as a computer nerd some 12 years ago and decided to do an SR swap and a hash version of this car. I had no idea what I was doing. That was pre-YouTube, pre any kind of information out there really on how to do the swap, except for some really crappy forum posts. And I figured it out. It took me a little bit longer than it probably would have taken anybody else, but I figured it out. Welding is something that I'm really figuring out right now, but I'm going to figure out with this car. I'm going to practice. That's the point. But say there are some things that some people just can't do. Say you're really horrible at painting. You need to think ahead. Do you have a buddy, a friend, a contact that can paint the car? Or are you willing to spend the $2,000-$3,000 that it's going to take or more to get the car painted? Are you able to do part of the paint? Like, can you do the engine bay, because it's not that important, because it's, you're not doing a show quality paint job in the engine bay or something. Or are you able to spray sealer in the floorboards? That's the thing. You got to know where you want to go with it. Like, if you really stupidly hate welding, don't get a car that's going to require a lot of welding. That's just something you don't do. You can always get a buddy over to do a little bit of welding, but remember, even if you don't know how to weld and you think you want to learn, or you want to learn, get all the stuff to do it, or find a buddy that's got the stuff. Have him coach you through it. Have him show you. Have him teach you a little bit. And then you go home and you spend the due diligent time learning. Just spend 20 minutes a day working on whatever. If it's painting, mix up some paint, spray a test panel, and just keep doing it over and over and over and over until you get it down. And then do it on your car. Kind of hard to start a project car if you can't get the thing home. So figure out how to get it home. The idea is pretty simple, but sometimes it can be pretty difficult. Come up with multiple options. For example, you got buddies that say they can help. Well, what if they all work that day? Or what if they got family stuff going on? They have lives too. They can't just drop what they're doing and come get your car. Or if you have a good owner that you're buying it from, set a time. You can set a time with your buddy to go get it. Or if they're unable to, do they have a truck they can loan you? Or do you have a truck or a way of getting a truck? You can turn around and go to U-Haul and rent a dolly or rent a little mini trailer and bring it home with that. Or you can rent the truck and dolly or truck and trailer at the U-Haul and bring it home that way. I mean, there's a lot of options. Now when this time comes, always remember, don't get too excited. You don't want to impulse buy it. Bring a friend. That's the best thing to do. They're in neutral territory. You can tell them what to look for. They can then look for it. When Marina and I went to look at this one, it was kind of a spur of the moment. It'd been on Craigslist for like 2 weeks, and we're like, you know what, we just need to go look at it. So we went and looked at it. She found some things that were wrong that I did not find, that I was not even looking for. Main things I looked for were frame rails, stuff like that, the common problems. Made sure it had other stuff on it, you know, the manual windows, at least a somewhat good dash. The rest of the interior really didn't matter as long as I had a back seat, because we knew we were going to chop it up and narrow it and do some other cool stuff to it later on. The point is, you want a friend to look over everything just in case you're getting a little distracted, because with this car there was a lot of modifications already done with this car and he was going over a lot of those, and then I had to kind of assert myself and say, hey, can I look at this, can I look at that, can we pop the hood, can we do this? Don't be afraid to ask, because if they're not willing to show you underneath the hood or allow you to really look through the car, then you don't want to buy it anyways. But always remember, be kind, be courteous. You are at their place looking at their vehicle. You also need to check over title. Look at the title. Make sure the title matches the VIN plate, the majority of the VIN plates, because the dash didn't have one because it was a secondary dash. The car's been painted a million times, so none of the door ones exist, but the main one up here matched. That's the most important thing. Also need to look at the condition of the title. Is it a clean title? Is it a salvage title? Is it a rebuilt title? Because all titles are kind of handled slightly different. A rebuilt title and a clean title can, usually in most states, or in all states that I know of, are just simple go down, you can tag it if you want. A salvage title requires a lot more effort. I say a lot more because then you turn around and you have to get that salvage title converted to a rebuilt title. To do that, well, look at your local laws, because as far as I know, they're probably different. You can't tell me California is the same as Missouri, but the idea is you got to know what you're getting into so that later on, hopefully, you don't find mystery problems. You want the car, it's exactly what you want. Now, don't be afraid to haggle. Don't ever, ever, ever buy the car for the price that they're asking. If it ends up coming down to it, that might be one thing. But you really want to kind of try to bring that price down. The more money you can save now, the more money you can like immediately drop into the car and start doing stuff to it. Don't lowball too much. That is kind of, I guess, horrible. That's a bad idea. That usually makes the current owner really mad if you try to go too low, or it upsets them, and you don't want to do that. Again, be nice when you're contemplating a price. Also think, if this car comes with a bunch of spare parts and a bunch of stuff I don't need, I know I can sell that and recoup some of the money that I'm spending extra. This car actually spent $300 more than I wanted to, but it had a motor and it had a ton of other parts, spare parts, aftermarket parts and stuff like that that I'm not going to want. So I'm able to sell those and recoup all that extra money, if not more, from the starter budget. So it was okay to do that, and in your condition or your situation, it's okay to do that too. Couple reasons why you want to walk away. The owner's angry, or you can't even get a hold of the owner hardly. They can't ever seem to come up with time for you to look at it. Just walk away. It's not worth your time. It's not worth the effort. It's not worth the headache. Or you go, you look at the car, and the guy's like, well, it's not in my name, and it's a couple owners back's name, and you know, or it doesn't have a title, or you know, stuff that's really going to cause a massive headache. Just walk away. Or if the owner requests a deposit. For example, I went and looked at a car, and the guy said, well, I'll send the title off, get it back in my name. You know, it takes 3-4 days. Big deal. That's not a big deal. And he's like, but for me to hold it, I need a deposit. I was, sure, what you want? And he's like, I want half down. Okay, that's no problem. I was like, you got a pen and piece of paper? I said, we need to write up a deposit so that I have on paper in a contractual agreement that I made a deposit on said vehicle. Now, this was a newer version of this car. It was an S14, which is like, it was a 95. And the guy didn't want to do that. He's like, no, we can keep it off the books, and then when I go to sell it to you, instead of you saying you paid $1,500 for it, I'll say you only paid $1,000 for it. And I'm like, okay, I understand writing it off the books like that, but no, because he can turn around and sell that car, and I can't prove I gave him $500 for a deposit. I have no claim to it. I can take small claims court all day long, and I'm not going to be able to get my money back. It's a risk you do not want to take. You don't want to give the deposits over the phone. You don't transfer any money over the phone, sight unseen. Just don't do it. It's a project car. Take your time. Find the one you want. Find everything in it you want. If not, say it's missing a key feature. Walk away. You're not going to be happy in the long run. Don't be scared. I know it can seem overwhelming and scary when getting into a big project car. If it does scare you, start simple. Get something that runs or is close to running. Start working up to the heavy modifications. Get the car running. Say transmission's bad. Put a new transmission in it, or clutch, or whatever it needs. New coil packs, whatever, to get the car running. Even if it's not the motor you want, the idea is to start out small and move big. Now say you're doing a car like this and you want to do an SR20 swap. Those are so easy to do these days. Like, it's the dumbest swap in the world. You drop the motor in, you can almost plug and play it. There's like 9 wires you depin, repin, it's ready to go. I mean, it's that simple. The car will run with factory gauges as long as you have the delivery cam. But that's a good motor swap to start with. And then say a year down the road, you can do something more complicated, like putting a straight 6 in it. Something you're really going to have to spend a lot of due diligent time figuring out how to wire yourself. Or if you want to do it the easy way and the most expensive way, you could actually just buy the plug and bang harnesses. Most cars these days, common project cars these days, you can pretty much find a community that has put the motor in it that you want to put in it, and you're good to go. You can figure out exactly what you have to wire. Or there's someone out there that make the wiring harness, or someone you could pay to do the wiring harness. I would suggest to stay away from really rusty cars. This car's not that bad, but if this is your first project, you don't want to spend 6 months replacing rusty panels. It's horrible. You also don't want to do wiring problems, like massive wiring problems. This whole car is a wiring problem, and I'm okay with it. You might be okay with it. Wiring doesn't scare me, so I'm alright with replacing all the body harness, engine harness, doing an aftermarket motor, blah 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 blah. It doesn't bother me, but it may you. It's something you got to figure out what bothers you, what doesn't, and slowly work your way up into it. Get the car running, buy a body kit, put a body kit on it, do some suspension work, do more motor work, and then jump into more heavier stuff. And before you know it, you'll be able to tackle a car like this, and it doesn't scare you. You know what has to be done. You know in the order that you can do it. You know that you can work on this one day, and this on one day, and that on one day. That's what I like about the bigger projects. For the most part of the project, I can bounce all over the place. And then as I start acquiring the parts that I need over time, I can start working on that, and then I can work on this. It's really nice. So don't be scared. Always stay excited. Always stay excited. Just think of what this thing's going to look like when it's done. It doesn't matter what it is now. It's what it will look like, how it'll run, how it'll perform, and how exciting it'll be when you can actually say that you built the car. You built it. You didn't buy it, you built it. Most people these days cannot say that. These people run around with 700 horsepower Hellcats. They didn't build nothing. People run around with Vipers or Lamborghinis or even fully built cars that didn't build themselves. They can't say that. They don't have that pride. Even if your car isn't 100% perfect in the end, the point is you did it yourself. And that's the most important thing. Hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully it just kind of got your head thinking into getting into a project car, and hopefully you buy one. If you're more interested in this and how this is going and all the shenanigans with it, go to my channel, check out Couples Therapy. It's my girlfriend and I's first project car together. It's not my first, but it is actually her first. So, it's coming along interesting. You should jump over there, check it out, subscribe for more videos. I'm going to do a couple more of these videos kind of around this idea, I guess you could say. But the point is, I'm just here to hopefully get your brain ticking. If you have any suggestions of other things, or maybe suggestions for other videos, comment below, send me a message. Seems like everybody wants to send me Facebook messages or Instagram messages rather than just commenting. But either way, thank you. I'll see you on the next video.
Well, folks, it's time to kick it old school. So you can feel cool. Give it to me, baby. Baby. Yeah.